Well, thank you for sticking around for this session. 80%. I know the crowd that I'm speaking to, by the way. 80% of people that reach the age 85 have some level of dementia. And the closer I get, the more I relate to the numbers. But I want you to not take offense to that, because it's not, as best we know, from you eating the wrong food, or from living in Alabama, or from there are a world of unknowns connected with dementia. There are at least 10 different varieties of dementia. The leading number one and most often spoken of, did I not turn it on? Thank you, sir. Is Alzheimer's. Anybody heard of it? Okay. You probably know someone with either early onset or end stage or rapid decrease in symptom. You know someone with Alzheimer's. On a medical level, until recently, Alzheimer's could only be confirmed by an autopsy. So it was something that we suspected, we guessed, we talked about, and or tried to medicate. And at the time, the causes were too much mercury in the fish, the aluminum in hairspray, some of the ingredients in mouthwash, and the blame went on and on and on. And today, there's very little concrete single cause ideas for what brings about Alzheimer's. It's quite possible that 50 years ago it was referred to more like senility. And everybody that grew old grew young again. You remember those? But now, as we try to diagnose and place a name or an acronym or something to identify all of the world's problems, we have tried to categorize areas of dementia from blunt force trauma that creates dementia, by the way. There are a couple of people here that I know and personally acquaint with that have been involved in accidents that had head injury that was debilitating for a while, and maybe still going on, but anyway, at least for some time, was very limiting. And there's Lewy body, there's, anyway, some of the paperwork here has the list of different kinds for you. But with Alzheimer's, in a medical level, it goes from stage 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 A, B, C, D, E, 7 A, B, C, D, E, F. And we have ways that we can categorize and recognize a group of symptoms that people begin to demonstrate at certain levels of this dementia. And I don't really want to spend a lot of time on the clinical side of this either. And I'll try to be much more respectful of your time and give a lot more time to questions tonight on this. My mom's name is Alice. 2 years ago, 3 years ago, there was a movie that came out entitled I'm Still Alice, or Still Alice. I carried my mom to see that. And I thought this is going to be eye-opening for her. And she said, well, that was the silliest movie I ever seen. Yes, it was, Mom. And I can share personal testimony of what I saw, what I know from literature, the indignity associated with Alzheimer's. Most people that have any degree of rationale and hear their own diagnosis of Alzheimer's consider it to be the most depressing word they have ever heard. I'm not saying cancer is a beautiful word, but somehow the loss of dignity. I printed a handful of cards several years ago, I think I told you about, that when I took my mom to a restaurant and her clothes did not match and they were soiled and she wasn't as clean as she used to always be, and I saw the looks on people's face when we walked in. I thought, my mom deserves better than what you're looking like. And so I printed a little card that said, my mom's name is Alice Button. She raised 5 children to fear God. She didn't choose what's happened. She's a good woman, and I love her. Please be kind to my mom. And it kind of had an effect on people. Some of them kind of started coming by and letting me know how they felt sorry for me. And I thought, I'm out on a date with my mama. Don't feel sorry for me. I'm okay. I preached my mom's funeral in September, and I got to share what I have shared. God has allowed me to be sitting alongside of about 25 people when they took their last breath and went off into eternity. I don't know if that's a good thing, a bad thing. I'm just telling you that God's worked it out, and I've been with people. Some of you won't want me to sing. I had a patient that was in some distress. I went to his house, and he was sitting in a chair, and his wife said, honey, you want to lay down? And so I thought, you know how this works anyway, it's 2-person assist, but I'm a pretty good guy, and I started lifting him up, and man, this guy, all of a sudden, he just had energy in his legs. He lifted himself up, he sat on the edge of the bed, and I thought, well, that went pretty well. He laid down, And a couple times like that, and I said, well, I'm just glad. I just wanted to be able to stop by and let you know that we love you, and we want to help if we can help. And his wife said, honey, you want him to read your favorite Bible verse? And she said, he nodded, and it's Jeremiah, and you know the verse. I know the plans or the thoughts that I have toward you to good and not evil. So I read it, and then she said, honey, if I knew the words, I would sing your favorite song. And I said, what's his favorite song? And she said, I come to the garden alone. And I said, I know that song. Would y'all, if I start it, will y'all join in with me? And so he said, and I said, I come to the garden alone. And he went. He was gone. That's it. At the office, they said, don't sing. Don't sing. I've been around a lot of people when they died. I'll tell you, my dad in '99 looked like he was trying out his wings. I thought, man, that's almost beautiful to me. But my mom had Alzheimer's. I know how it works. And I've seen people at this stage. So I was with her, and she passed away at 10:20 on a Wednesday night that I did not make church. I said, I'm staying with my mom. Actually, I said, I told my wife that, I'm going to stay till about 5, and I'll just head straight to church. And at 5 o'clock, I said, babe, I can't. I don't think I can leave. And so I sat by my mom, and she was doing the little fish mouth breathing. You know what that's like, right? You've probably respirations are probably around 40. I watched that. 30, 26, 17, 11. Now there's some arrhythmia. Now there's some. I'm watching, and about 9:40, my mom's breathing just really calmed down. I'm so glad she's not struggling for breath. It's just wonderful she's not struggling for breath. And then I've watched a lot of people at this stage, and their eyes open, and their eyes begin to glass and roll back. Not my mama. My mama's eyes got really fixed, like she was staring at something that I couldn't see. Been around a lot of people when they died. But my mom was looking at something, and I'm not trying to be super spiritual or heretical either. My mom was staring at something. And she stared for 20 minutes. And about 3 minutes before my mama died, a familiar grin came over her face. And I knew what she was seeing. But for about 8 years, I've been watching this moment come. And I've been watching, like some of you know this experience. I lived next door to my mom, and we had gone over, and we would drink coffee when you had come down, and we would go over, and I didn't know this. if I went over to my mom's house in the morning and I would say, "Mom, you awake?" And if she didn't say anything, I'd just decide that, I don't want to wake you up. It's, I know how important sleep can be, and tomorrow I stopped by in the morning and, "Mom, you awake? Is that you, Edwin Dean?" "Yes, ma'am." She'd get out and she'd come and she'd say, "You didn't come by yesterday." And I said, "Yes, ma'am, I did. I came by and tried to wake you up. You just slept." And she said, I might cry just a little bit, okay? She said, "Don't ever let that happen again. It's the best 15 minutes of my day." And so I spent the best part of 8 years trying to figure out what minute my mom was living in. Y'all know what I'm talking about? And I decided that my mom deserved dignity. And I want to talk to my mom with dignity. And if you've ever had this experience, I want you to know I feel for you because I know how difficult this can be. If during my 30-minute coffee morning with my mom, 21 times she would say, "What's today?" "It's Tuesday, Mom." "Tuesday." "What's today?" "It's Tuesday." "What's today?" "Still Tuesday, Mom." I decided that's not my approach, by the way. Tried my best every time to say it. "It's Tuesday, Mom." February 11th. "It's Tuesday, Mom." "Next Tuesday is your birthday." "How old am I going to be?" "Mom, you're going to be 85. "Wow, are you sure?" "Yes, ma'am." My mom would be 90 now, but she died at 89 in 11 months and a few days and whatever. I don't want you to feel sorry for me because this is not a sorry for me moment. It's just like, I cared for her like many Alzheimer's patients as long as I could provide the level of care that she needed and deserved. But she got out of for dignity and her personal needs, they got either too great or too undignified for me to be the caregiver. And we began to try our very best and allow for the house to be a little dirtier, the dishes to stack up a little taller, and she had a fall. I carried her every meal. Carried her a meal on Saturday night, and she thanked me, and I went back Sunday after church. She was not able to go, although every Sunday she would say, "If I'm able, I might want to go tomorrow," but she wasn't able, and I knew better. But I carried her lunch Sunday afternoon. When I got she lived next door, I just walked across the yard and went in and discovered my mom laying on the floor where she had tried to get up sometime in the middle of the night, and her body's strength would not support her, and she fell and she hit her head on the little table next to the bed, and she was laying in a puddle of blood. And I called 911 and they came, and I was very suspect that I was going to be on the news for being a negligent son, for letting my mom live in a place that was less than clean, and I worried that somehow my reputation would be at risk and they would somehow rake me over the coals for being such an uncaring, unloving, and all I wanted to do was love on my mom and let her have as much of her own life as she could. But they said, Mr. Button, your mom cannot live on her own. And you can't provide her care. And so she went to the hospital, and from there she really never knew where she was. In fact, she told me many times, they've messed up my room. I can't even find the door. And I'm talking in Alzheimer's talk. My dad that passed away in '99, she hadn't seen him in several hours now. But her mom was just there. Is that right? Yes. And if I can get out of here, she'll let me move back in if I need to. Is that right? There's an absolute destruction of dignity associated with this incredible process known as dementia. The human body is fearfully and wonderfully made. Anybody here agree with me? Up and down our spinal column surges fluid, we call spinal fluid. It is intended to provide an exact amount of lubrication for the brain. Fantastic that somehow our bodies know how much that is. And it feeds, moisturizes, and cares for. And it's not just any fluid. You can't just open it up and pour water on it. It's like some of the byproduct fluids of the body are exactly what the brain needs. It's amazing that God's got us so designed that while the body is doing something and it's breaking down food, that it's making just exactly the chemicals that your brain needs to keep it lubricated and stimulated, to feed electrons and neutrons and spiking channels and bridges between different memory banks of your brain. Part of the dementia has to do with what is known as common, but it actually is very uncommon. It has to do with the hydration of the brain. Sometimes not enough fluid. Sometimes the 12 to 16 ounces that typically goes up the spinal column finds areas that rob from that chemical, and the brain begins to dry and crystallize, and sparks begin to without purpose lunge and jolt and look for recipients of information, and it causes people to begin to change their personality and say things that they never would have ever said before, and act out in ways that are absolutely contrary to their temperament. Sometimes it becomes oversaturated, and like the wrinkles in a hand that has been overbaptized, your brain has a tendency to become lulled and begins failing to send the necessary signals. We're fearfully and wonderfully made. And God knows that the body and the spirit, we we experience. I shake hands, I hug, I kiss. Excuse me, in the mind, I listen to, I react to, I learn from, they mold me, that mind begins to mold and make mine, and this two parts of this three-part being, I feel like that I have a connection with, but the Spirit, I know the Bible says, my spirit beareth witness with your spirit that we're children of God, but where is that at? What's it look like? How do we medicate it? You know what? We talked about death a little bit ago, and death is separation. That's what it is, it's separation. When the spirit departs the body. And we look at all kinds of things. We will check respiration. We'll do, carotid or arm, both arms, feet. We'll find, brain activity. Wonderful thing. And if you ever heard somebody say, they can hear you right up to the end. Don't just keep, make sure you don't quit talking to them. Be careful what you say around them because they can hear. The reason that we believe that is because the last activity to shut down is around the brain function that is sensory perception. And so we kind of have to assume that there's a good chance they hear. And even if they don't blink their eye and wiggle their finger, they do still maybe hear and know. But at some point, the spirit leaves the body. It's gone. That's death. We talked about grief already, but 100 people a year tell me, I actually started my grieving a long time ago because my mom, although she resides at We Care in Wildwood, Florida, the ALF nursing home, room 101, my mom is really not there. Because at least one faculty is just not my mama anymore. And so we begin to go through the process of turning loose of them. And maybe it's eased because of it. It's not good, not pleasant, not beautiful. But somehow we face Alzheimer's, we face dementia. You have some material that I tried to make available to you that identifies the types. It even identifies, one of the pages actually identifies the stages. Word salad, cognitive disrepair, 5 words or less, unintelligible conversation, repeated. Anyway, you can go through all that. What does that mean? From start to finish, on a clinical level, from start to finish, from what would be considered stage 3, where there's a recognizable problem, to 7F, which is there's no further down to go, they're going to die. That typical journey is 8 years. You ready for that journey? When I do funerals, a lot of times I will say, not only do you have my utmost respect, but I want you to know that you honored a promise like a champion. You said, in sickness and in health, you had no idea how sick could be. We have support groups that we offer for caregivers for Alzheimer's because of how absolutely significant this disease and how troubling and how difficult it is. I brought some material with me tonight. One of the things is a book entitled Talking to Alzheimer's, because that's a problem. We ceased talking to mom and we started talking to the disease. Never a good idea. Have you ever said something like, treat your children well because they might pick your rest home? You know, we need to be providing dignity, and I'm not so cynical as to say what goes around comes around or any of the other stuff. But I tell you that the care that you provide, God has a way of meeting it back to you. And if you don't care, neither will they. And I plead with you, the hardest battle that you may ever have to face is watching a long-term death diagnosis, Alzheimer's. Well, what can be done? There are medications that are being explored, possibilities that exist. Most doctors will tell you today that control the brain exercises for the value of the patient. Stimulate brain activity for the value of the patient. If they like board games, get them a bunch of board games. Play the board games with them. Engage people in the kind of activities that make them rehearse. What was your brother's name? What was the address back when? You remember you told me it was Bartow. Weren't you born in Bartow? And find the triggers, find the things that bring them joy, rehearse those moments of joy, find out where they are mentally living, and go there with them. Brother Ed, aren't you lying if you... Wow, what a question. I choose to believe that I chose for the moment to live in my mom's world. My mom chose to live in my world when I was a little bitty baby. And I wanted to return the favor and live in her world. Cost me nothing. But it gave her something very precious. You don't have to like this, and you can disapprove of it, and you will have your right, and I may not even argue with you. But last year at Christmas, I was Santa Claus. It's the beard, not the belly. And I went to the nursing home where my mom was at. I went there this year too, but she wasn't there. And I went to try to somehow, all those old people like Santa Claus. And I think some of them started believing again. I don't know. But I went to see my mama. And I said, "You're Alice Button, aren't you?" So, well, you weren't here last year. I just wanted to, I wanted to make sure I had the new address. You weren't here last year. And she said, and I said, I know you. You were born in Bartow. I know the whole family, yeah. It was It was a wonderful moment. Somebody said, "Don't you feel like you were making fun of your mama?" And I said, "I was making my mama smile. It was the best day my mom had all week. Santa came by to see my mama." You're going to have to pay a price. I believe in holistic medicine. I believe that it takes a church to get somebody completely healed. It takes a Savior. It takes a church family. And I got doctors in on my medical team too. I don't just self-medicate. I try to get a little advice every once in a while. And I like bringing in experts in many different fields. My face, when this guy, he was talking on the phone, caused a tremendous accident, and I had to have, I thought maybe I'd stitch it up myself, but I chose not to. Actually, I was completely out. It doesn't matter. I don't have a problem putting doctors on the team. Family is a part of the team. I don't know how many of you will remember the hospital days where that in ICU visiting hours were from 8 to 8:15, and only 2 members of the family are allowed anytime, and children under 12 you can't be on that floor, and what a wonderful concept. You know, what we're going to do is isolate them from everybody that cares, and we're going to see how that does for you. And something genius happened about 10 years ago. They decided that some of the very best medicine these folks are getting, their families bringing to them. Some of the happiest moments in the lives of these people who are absolutely at their worst moment is when somebody came by and said, "Hey, Mama, I love you." And a doctor wasn't in the room, and they cheered up. Their heart rate got a little better. The blood oxygen got better. They were taking deeper breaths. Their brain responded to that. And somehow, the nurses come rushing down because the monitors, the bells and the whistles went off at the nurses' station. She was better. We're fearfully and wonderfully made. I don't know if I mentioned that. God knew what he was doing to design us with a mom and a dad. Not 2 moms or 2 dads. Sorry, that was free. But he knew what he was doing when he gave mothers the ability to nurse their children. He knew what he was doing. I'm not opposed to infamil, and I'm certainly not. But I'm just telling you, God had a really neat plan. The plan not only involved them being able to provide nourishment, but to build a bond that could never, ever. My mom gave me life. My mom nourished me. My mama sacrificed for me. My mama clothed me. There's no way that I'm going to let my mama die unloved. That's my testimony, and that's the story of Alzheimer's times 10. I know the hour, and I have a lot I'd like to share. Talking to Alzheimer's is one. The 11th hour, gone from my sight. Living with dementia. There's so much literature, and I will gladly provide you with literature. But I wonder if you have some questions. I know the hour. I've got a 7-hour trip, so but you're not, I'm ready. Absolutely. Thank you. Conflict, I mean, I wish that I could tell you that you're immune to conflict and you'll never face a problem. You got saved and God just took care, there's no more problems. I read about it in Revelation chapter 21, but that's not today. I see you shaking your head, yes. Probably. It's a comorbid, and 85% of the time, there is a comorbid with Alzheimer's or dementia. There's a comorbid, something that is equally a part of the dying process or could very well contribute to the dying process. Some of the comorbids happen to be extreme depression, adult failure to thrive. There's terminology that I know that some of you would be familiar with that is kind of like the give-ups, and it might be that it kind of mirrors loss of identity, loss of purpose, loss of love, loss of some of those losses. And they talked about this yesterday or last night, some about how the frontal lobe, and I'm kind of prepared to talk about that, but I know that it can be a very complicated process to, but emotions do affect, and what's going on right here can shut down a lot of things in the body. Alzheimer's is almost always going to have, down the road, it's going to have incontinence of bowel and bladder. Why? Why? It doesn't seem like there's a connection, except for the fact that this sensory organ that we call the brain, whether it is voluntary or involuntary, it's providing all the signals that make you who you are. And so they begin to get violated. Your temperament, your body function, your attitude, your word choice, all changes. Sweet, sweet talking people can cuss. And it's because they grew up with a sailor, but they cuss. They never did. They never would. But now somehow they do. They are easily aggravated, agitated. They don't. The last thing you want to do is to somehow pretend that you don't understand what they're saying. They become very frustrated because they know what they said. And so sometimes you just got to say, "Is that right?" And you go on, and maybe tomorrow they won't remember that they told you that and you had to pretend like you got it. I've had a whole bunch of those one-sided conversations. Really? My, I wouldn't believe it if you hadn't told me. My. Anyway. That sounds so familiar to me. But disoriented, we usually give a test about time, place, who's the president, what's your, what season is it? There's a orientation is one of the real keys to, and so what medication is suggesting is that we want to provide, even if they're in an ALF, an assisted living facility or SNF, whatever it is, wherever they're at, we want to provide as many home tokens as we possibly can. And we want them, because some things are second nature. Some people that knit and crochet do it while they're talking, and it's like it's a muscle memory thing, and they can build a blanket, and they didn't even know they did it. Some of you drive to work and you don't know how you got there, but sometimes it is and so we try to suggest activities that they used to love to create that activity that will stimulate muscle memory, which will stimulate where all memory is, right here. Absolutely. She's either that, okay, well, I was going to say either that, or she knows she's not where she always was. And now the best way for me to describe that is it's upstairs, it's downstairs, it's right. That's just a safety net. Thank you. Other, yes, ma'am. Yeah, she's back. They are, because of the early onset, you find that they just had a bad day. But then all of a sudden they have a bad week. But then they have a bad month. But they had a couple of really good days, maybe 4 or 5 good days together. And everything is wonderful. They know everybody that they're talking to, and it's just like they're back. I don't know, maybe they had a flu or something, but sometimes it gets to the place that they call it honeymooning. It's a phenomenon that I'm telling you, when these sparks happen, they can accidentally land at the right place and open up, and that avenue will be good for a little bit, but then it's dried up, it's brittle, it's coarse, or it's saturated, it's swimming, it doesn't know what to do. There are so many possibilities associated with the aptitude of the brain that it's just hard to put but anyway, they do have some people, they have what they call sundowners, that what happens to them is they're fine during the day, but at 5 o'clock at night, they become a different person. Reality changes for them. You can get them up in the morning, and they're great about getting a bath, going to breakfast, going to lunch, watching their favorite TV show, interjecting with all the other people. They'll throw the ball back and forth, and then 5 o'clock they have dinner, and you try to take them to the room, and you tell them it's time to put on your pajamas, time to get in. Don't touch me! And then they think that you're trying to do something wrong, and it's just, and it can happen every night, and that's called sundowners. It's like my brain's got to turn off for a while. I kept it going as long as I could today. That's it. It's got to shut down for. But then the honeymoon thing is typically more of they have a good day. Seems like maybe they're bouncing back. Hey, the medication, you finally got the medication right. No, we didn't. They're having a good moment. Good question, though. Enjoy those moments. And if you know that I want to encourage you. Find out from them talk to them. Uh, they may not want to leave without telling a story. Mom, how you doing? I mean, right now, Mom, how do you feel? I told my mom every day, all 5 of you kids love you, Mom. They all miss you, all thinking about you. I talk to them all the time. Penny will be here tomorrow. Ethel said she'd be here in a couple of weeks. They're looking forward to being with you. And, you know, hope would, you know, this just, you want to do what you can. And that may not have answered your question, but I feel what your pain. And we have a hope, man. I've been praying for a miracle. This is my miracle. And then tomorrow, you know, my dream shattered because she was trying to yank the tray off of the chair, and she said, "If somebody give me a hammer, I'll get out of this." You know, this is, you know, Mama, please, Mama. Yeah. Anyway, sorry. Yes, ma'am, in the back. Well, while she is not in, I disabled a lot of my mom's house, so she couldn't burn it down. The stove, it was just, this stuff's never, well, my mom had a problem. I mean, she was a great cook, and then all of a sudden, pizzas weren't done unless they were just soot, you know, so I mean, I knew that, so we just disabled some things. And then I took all the meals, and so safety was an issue, but as long as she could be safe and independent, I tried to do that. And I would encourage you to, you know, if she's with you or nearby or however that is existing for you, to just watch for safety, keep her safe. But remember that time is absolutely irrelevant. You can see her every day, and you see her tomorrow and she'll say, "Well, you've been gone 3 weeks. How long do you expect me to sit here and wait for you?" And you know, and they're different, but they're cold. They can become very callous, very, you know. You love them anyway. I really sympathize. I saw you. Go ahead. Yes. Those neurological tests can, if it's a dementia, you have 3 different memory banks in your head. And if you treat the disease as if the test, they can say, I want to give you 3 words, and I want you to remember these 3 words. Would you do that for me? Okay. That's the test. Okay. Yeah. Well, I've taken the test from my rec and I got my 3 words right, but I'm just saying that if the decapacity is in the frontal lobe, that's a great test. But if it's back in the rear of your brain or in the temporal area, that's not such a good test, and it won't really reveal the answer of the dementia. They can pass the test because boat, apple, and green. Probably now, if you ask me in a bar, I'll be able to tell you. Plane, bike, and orange. That's what I remember it, right? Wait a minute, I apologize. I forgot.
Well, my question was kind of along the lines of this gentleman addressed. I'm starting to see early changes in my dad that concern me. And I'm concerned that it's more than just a bad day or that sort of thing. And how do you approach that subject with your parent? You know, I'm concerned about the things that are coming out of your mouth. I'm concerned about these changes that I see.
First of all, treat it medical and suggest, and maybe they do, but make sure that they're getting a medical checkup. You need, Mom, it's February. It's been a year since you saw your doctor. I'm gonna make an appointment next week sometime. So don't forget. I'll be by, and they just see to it that they follow up. Let the doctor know. And your mom may not know the difference between a neurologist and a podiatrist, so you can just have it. And they know that many times they are evaluating under cover of secrecy, and they can at least, with dignity, determine if they suspect something that we need to follow up on. Because old age happens, and my memory is not what it once was, neither is yours. And so your mom certainly has a right to forget. And like I said, we have 3 parts. Anybody ever experienced deja vu? You know what it is? Deja vu is when 2 of your memory banks are trying to produce the thought simultaneously. You stored that in more than one place. Phone number, I remember that phone number, 793. Anyway, if it's stored in more than one place and you're trying to recall it, you can experience deja vu just because your brain has that 2 places. Deja vu. And so sometimes they can remember for your sake. Sometimes it's temporal, sometimes it's frontal lobe or elongata, whatever. And that is really, yeah, I know. Okay. Yes, it just becomes expensive urine. That's what they tell me. So that's their words, not mine. I apologize the way it sounds, but it's like, but early on, you certainly want, I want quality of life for myself, and they deserve it as well. So while it can help, allow it. I know I saw another hand. Yes, sir, brother.
I was just going to say that different cases can be totally different. My mother's mother, my grandmother, she was about 90. She tripped over a chair in her kitchen. She ended up breaking a hip. And then shortly after that, she started showing signs of dementia. She went through what you're talking about. I mean, she talked about she'd been out picking peas, and her sharecropper, her family was when she was back meeting here. We asked her about her husband, was Frank Style. She said, man, that guy's arrogant. I never date that guy. But she married him and was married to him for 70 years.
Wow.
He's been, anyway. But my mother ended up around 70. She was my bookkeeper for my company, and we had gone to Canada. We came back, and I went into a local supply house to get some batteries, and they asked me how I was going to charge them. They said, you're on COP. And I'm like, come to find out, she hadn't paid any of the bills since October. And she didn't do this regression like back. It was a whole different way, but she slowly started not being able to do things like simple things like feed yourself, and then speech and different things slowed up to the point now she's in bed and can't do anything. Matter of fact, you go in and this has been a few years back, go in and ask her, are you hungry? She'd say, yeah, but I don't have any money. Mother, I'll get you some food.
Yeah.
And no idea what you want.
Well, let me tell you this 8-year thing. 7F is that's at the end of the road. My mom never got to 7F. My mom was 7A 2 days before she died. But in spite of that, in a short period of time, she made terrible plunges in the chart, but she held on to some stages for long periods of time. Now, what I want to share is every accident is always 3. Every crash, there's at least 3 crashes in one. Every crash. If you're ever in a crash, remember this. The car hits the tree. Your body hits the car, and your organs hit the frame of your body. You know what a concussion is? Your brain just hit the skeleton that protects it. I'm disoriented. What's today? What's that? Every fall, if you're in a facility, every fall that's not witnessed is examined for neurological damage. And so she had something that tipped the scales from 7A to, or from 6 or from 3 to 7A or B in a day, because blunt force trauma. There's something that is the inertia or an initial component, and sometimes it's just we live long enough and that's what happens. Sorry about that. It's 9 o'clock. That's kind of when I thought we were trying to have it wind down, but I'm wound up. So, any other questions or comments? Because what you're experiencing is very important to me. They do not lose their identity when they lose their mind. They do not lose their worth when they lose their mind. They do not lose their importance. They do not lose their relationship with God. And so many gospel groups that are out there right now are writing songs that are hitting home with us, because they're saying, you know, she no longer But she still remembers Jesus' name. She still remembers Amazing Grace. My mom, 2 days before she died, I have her on my phone. I should play it. She sang with me, "This world is not my home, I'm just a passing through. My treasures are laid up somewhere." I listen to it every once in a while. That's right. And that's right. That's right. Sometimes I think God lets them do that just for me. Yeah. Absolutely not. Even for them. Red Skelton. Anybody remember Red Skelton? Remember? I love Red Skelton. And Clem Cadell Hopper and all of his guys, they're all friends of mine. I relate to many of them. I went to see Red Skelton in Orlando, and he was carrying on, and he was like 83, I don't know, something like that. He still, and he said, you know why I do this? You think I love people. You know why I do this? Because it still makes me money. And as long as I make money, my kids keep me out of the home. So we all laugh, So he's an entrepreneur, kind of like that lady, just fine. Thank you all for being here. And these are painful subjects, and sometimes the only way you can really even face a painful subject is to laugh a little bit. And I laughed many times with my mom, and there are some times I laughed at my mom. You sure you want to go out like that? That's exactly what you want to wear when we go. Yep. What's your mom's name? All right. Okay. Absolutely. Well, thank you. Quality of life and wonder. Feeding tube, peg tubes, there are a lot of different things. We had, and I really want to encourage you to make some plans for yourself, and including selecting someone to be a medical surrogate and POA and all the other things that are, there's kind of like considered the three, there are three different elements that you want in a guardianship or whatever, somebody that can make medical decisions when you cannot, and all that kind of stuff. And you need to be prepared to do that and make sure that you, first of all, recognize that it's your responsibility to honor your parents' request. I mean, that's, and that might be painful, by the way. But if they were alive, they would be making that choice, and they asked you to make their choice for them. Yes, ma'am. Right. If she made that decision with clear mind, then her wishes are, I think, to be honored. If they're coerced, I think you might have a case to maybe step over that line. But if no, ma'am. Thank you. All good questions. And I appreciate you calling attention to that. And there are like 5 wish books that you can get. That end of life, I want to be kept clean and dry and fed, or I do not want any supernatural. I do not want feeding tube. I do not want, I do not want to be ventilated. I do not want to be, DNRs or whatever. There are different levels of choices that you can make about how to be treated in end of life. And then you may want to make sure that you have somebody in place that can exercise your wishes when you cannot. Because otherwise, doctors are duty bound. The Hippocratic Oath demands that they're going to stay on until there's nothing left to do, to work. Okay? Thank you all. God bless you.